All right, let's dig right in. Tariffs. These aren't just some fancy political buzzwords. Tariffs are effectively taxes, a tax that most of us don't even realize we're paying. And guess what? It's wreaking havoc on the wallets of working Americans every day. Play this clip.
Actually, Secretary Bessent is wrong. In most economists, almost every study I've seen shows the consumer, the importer, pays the price for the tariff, not the exporter.
All right, Greta, you've negotiated the end of trade disputes. Where do you go from here? How do you see this ending? Is there a way out?
Well, I think that goes to the very point that's already been made, that the question is, what is President Trump looking for? What are the purpose of these tariffs? And the legal rationale that has been stated is to stem the flow of illegal immigration and fentanyl into this country. But there's a lot of questions about, well, what can Canada and Mexico do to resolve this issue and have the tariffs reduced or go away?
I also want to ask you, Warren Buffett compared the tariffs to an act of war. I mean, I spoke to the Canadians recently and people in the Mexican government, and they're both very upset about this. Is that accurate? Do you think this is an act of war?
Well, I don't think we're there. This is not an act of war. I think that there has been discussion. You heard Secretary Bessent talk about continued negotiations. So I think that it's still a big question. Where do we go from here? It is certainly unprecedented, both to use this authority and of this magnitude to impose tariffs on trading partners. It felt like a lot in the first Trump administration when broad tariffs were put on China. This is on the order of 5 or 6 times the amount of trade that was at issue there. And so how do you de-escalate? What's the off-ramp? What are the asks? These are all questions that still we don't have a lot of answers to.
And Steve, if they can't de-escalate or find that off-ramp, if one exists, could supply chain disruptions come anywhere near what we saw during the pandemic?
Well, certainly for a time, supply chains are going to be disrupted. Remember that we created this whole North American supply chain, and that's what it's called, because both Canada, the United States and Mexico have established these supply chains based upon treaties, first based on NAFTA, and then based upon the United States agreement that was negotiated under President Trump. And what's odd about this to many people is here he is going back on an agreement that he established in 2019 and called it one of the best trade agreements that was out there. So right now, what's happening is you have companies that are figuring out where's the best place to make a product. Can I bring it back into the United States? Will I be able to sell it here profitably? I've heard some estimates that the cost of a car could go up by $10,000 because of this. That will make some products not profitable in the United States, which is why, by the way, these tariffs beget additional tariffs in April, because now he has to protect other parts of the North American supply chain.
Yeah, Aaron, talk to us about the politics of this, because as Steve just mentioned, the USMCA, which is what came after NAFTA, was negotiated by the first Trump administration. So not only is he kind of going back on his policy there, but he campaigned on lowering prices, and he seems to have backed himself into a corner here. How much of tonight's address to Congress do you think the president is going to focus on the economy?
Well, I think you'll definitely hear the president talk about the economy, and probably more from the perspective of the successes as he sees them at this point. We do know, as you've referenced, that there are going to be reciprocal tariffs that are put in place in the early part of April. The president said yesterday that he fully intends to make sure that happens as well. What those tariffs look like in terms of how big they are and which countries have which types of tariffs are something that is yet to be seen. We know that the administration has been working on that level of detail, again, to be rolled out in April, but we should expect to hear the president talk about that in his speech tonight. He would likely reference the tariffs with Mexico and Canada and China as well. We've heard him say in the past that if those countries took reciprocal action against the United States, then they could expect to see more action taken by his administration as well. We heard from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent earlier today that the president is likely to talk about, again, some of his successes, the billions of dollars in investment that he's been able to draw into the United States over over the last month or so that he's been in office. We know mostly from companies that are based in Asia. The president also likely to talk about, the Treasury Secretary said, some of the work that's been done to improve mortgage rates in this country. Also, the work that the administration is looking to do and has already done to some extent on cutting regulation and cutting red tape. All those are things, Christina, that the president sees as positive and will likely, again, try to lift up in his comments today. Of course, there will be many other topics, immigration, things of that nature that the president will talk about tonight as well.
I'm sure he'll have a lot to say. Steve, I do want to ask, the White House is arguing essentially this is short-term pain for long-term economic gain. Is there any chance that these tariffs benefit the U.S. economy?
Well, over time, there could be some companies that move production into the United States. But the question becomes, at what price? Right now, Secretary Luckman this morning on our air said, why are any cars made in Canada that are sold in the United States? And the answer to that is he should know it's capitalism. It was the cheaper place to make certain products or certain parts of the product and sell it in the United States at a better profit, at a better price. Well, what's going to happen is everybody's going to pay a higher price for certain gain that's out there. Your question was studied, in fact, from the 2018 tariffs, where, yes, there was some benefit to the steel industry from the tariffs that were put in place. However, the steel users, they lost jobs. So what's happening is there is some short-term pain that will happen, and then over time, what's going to happen is the bigger losers will appear, and those are all the users of the stuff that's being brought in and for which prices are rising.
The users as in American consumers.
Right, exactly.
All right. Aaron Gilchrist, Steve Leisman, and Greta Peisch, thank you both.
A family, your average middle-income family, might be paying an extra $1,200 a year. And for what? Groceries, electronics, medicine, you name it. Everyday essentials just inflated, all because of these import taxes or tariffs, making everything cost more for us while companies pass these costs on to who? Us, the consumers. And let's talk jobs. Over 300,000 manufacturing jobs were lost, gone, as a direct result of Trump's tariff policies during his earlier trade wars. This isn't just some abstract number. This is neighbors losing their paychecks, communities struggling to keep local businesses afloat. You can feel the ripple effects everywhere. Economic stability? It's now a house of cards. Take it from me, even in healthcare, I see this mess firsthand. Patients come to my practice, and they're juggling not only their prescriptions, but the absurd cost of medications. Medications that doubled in price because of tariffs on imported pharmaceuticals. Families, sick parents, they're left choosing between their health or, well, their rent. I mean, how is that okay? It's an economic catastrophe masquerading as policy. Now, to truly understand where we're headed with these current tariff policies, we must take a step back to the 1930s. You've probably heard of the Great Depression, right? But have you heard of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act? That, my friends, is where it all connects. Back then, the U.S. piled on massive tariffs to supposedly boost domestic industries. And guess what happened? It tanked the global economy even further. Our trading partners retaliated. Jobs disappeared, and the unemployment rate shot up like wildfire. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. Economists, modern ones, ancient ones, they all agree. Mark Zandi calls tariffs a lose-lose situation. And I mean, he's not wrong. You see, tariffs don't just hurt the countries we're taxing. They bite back hard. In the 1930s, retaliation crippled industries that depended on exports. Farmers, manufacturers, they were crushed under the weight of those policies. And today, we're repeating history in the most reckless way. Take the tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico. They're eerily similar to those retaliatory trade fights from the 1930s, except now the stakes, they're even higher. Global supply chains connect everything. You disrupt one link, just one link, and it's like toppling a row of dominoes. We're already seeing the impacts. Steel tariffs driving up production costs, groceries skyrocketing from agriculture levies, long-term consequences. These could unravel decades of built-up trade relations. And the worst part? It's avoidable. We've been here before. We know better. Look, we've got Canada, the EU, and even China firing back with billions, yes, billions, in retaliatory tariffs. This isn't just some below-the-surface trade scuffle. It's creating shockwaves through global alliances. Stock markets have spiraled, and investor confidence, well, let's just say everyone's holding their breath. March alone delivered some harsh wake-up calls. Here's the reality. We're witnessing tariffs escalate overnight. Canada slapped $100 billion in new tariffs on U.S. goods this month. And for what? Bilateral trade relations are deteriorating faster than anyone anticipated. Once strong partnerships face mounting tensions while companies struggle to adjust to the chaos, then there's us, everyday folks, left to absorb the cost hikes in real time. Let me ask you this. Are tariffs really protecting us, the people they claim to serve? Or are they just smoke and mirrors? Because from where I sit, they feel like a blunt tool far too reckless for a globally connected economy. They disrupt supply chains, fracture alliances, and by the time the dust settles, we're looking at long-term damage that could take decades to rebuild. And it impacts more than our wallets. It undermines democratic principles in trade. If our policies alienate allies and isolate us economically, then what are we left with? A short-term illusion of power that weakens the very framework supporting international stability. Do you think Trump is intentionally trying to destroy the U.S. dollar? Why would he do this? Maybe to bring about a new world order, new currency? You know, Trump does have his own meme coin. You see, the broader implications here aren't just economic. They're about trust, fairness, and accountability. What kind of future do we want to cultivate? That wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I want to personally thank each and every one of you for tuning in and for your continued support. It means more than you know. If you found value in today's discussion, please drop a comment, follow us on all social media platforms, and let us know what topics you'd like to see us cover next. Be sure to sign up for our email newsletter so you never miss an update or exclusive insight. And if you believe in independent media that digs deeper and dares to tell the truth, please consider following The Real 411 on Substack and Fanbase. We offer both free and paid subscriptions, and your support helps us continue producing content that informs, empowers, and sparks real conversation. Thanks again for being part of this journey, because remember, the story is never just the headline. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and stay real.